This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager.
Remember when Scott Boland came to England and started doing madness like this? And yet only a few weeks later, Scott Boland is probably almost finished in this Ashes. No matter how much Australia rates him, this Ashes has been horrendous to him. To average over 100 in what is a moderate to low scoring series is insane. Scott Boland cannot take a wicket right now. He has the same wickets as Travis Head and less than Joe Root. The part-time office are lapping the man who was fighting with George Lohman for the lowest bowling average of all time just a couple of months back. But while he hasn't been at his best in this Ashes, has he really lost the magic he had in England just a short while back? Like, is that even possible? I suppose the real question is, has Scott Boland just run out of luck? There was a time during the third Ashes test when I was toying with a piece on England being the best performed team ever to be down 3-0. Obviously, that entire thing didn't quite happen. But generally, sports fans hate these pieces. And I had a discussion with a journalist who was saying if they go 3-0 down, they will deserve it. That is how fans like to think of things. And he also had a point. England had the best of the conditions pretty much all the way through this series. They had themselves in several games before baffling mistakes. And while some people will point to them dropping a lot of catches as a sign of bad luck, they chose to get rid of a specialist keeper for an injured player who clearly they hadn't seen a lot of. From the declaration to the kamikaze batting at Lords, right through to bouncing Travis Head when the ball was moving everywhere at Headingley, England had plenty of chances to win a test this series. But even right at the end at Headingley, had Carey left Wood-Skyer for Boland, Australia might have actually slipped through the slim, but definitely there, cracks to end up 3-0 in what was a very close-fought series. Put it this way, it would have been the closest 3-0 we'd ever seen because England were in every single game. That had ended up 2-1 was probably much closer to being fair. Australia has been better and certainly is on paper, and that is reflected in the fact that they had the 2 win. But England has worked out a good proportion of the Australian top order. Lyon is a huge loss because he's such an iron man for Australia, and only 2 of their quicks have fired so far. No matter how you look at it, Australia's been better, but not 3-0 better. So if they got to that part, luck or variance would have played a part, as it always does. Essentially, there isn't that much between these 2 teams at the moment. One thing in England's favour is Scott Boland not taking any wickets. Even if England is not as good as Australia, it would be hard to argue that England have schemed very well to take a few Australian players out. For Warner, Broad used something that they had prepared earlier. But Marnus Labuschagne is currently averaging less than Pat Cummins in this series, and Steve Smith has crossed 50 only once. Carey and Green also struggled. But it's not just the batters. Josh Hazlewood hasn't been great either, certainly by his standards. Part of that might be that he doesn't look fully fit to me since his last injuries. But he and Boland are both fast, medium, line and length bowlers. So I don't think it's a surprise that both of them haven't been at their best. Clearly Boland has struggled more. But looking beyond the average, you can see just how much closer these 2 are. Scott Boland has gone at nearly 5 runs and over in this series. But Josh Hazlewood, he's going at 4.6. This is not normal for him. Before this series, Hazlewood had 2 games ever with an economy rate of more than 4. Yet 5 times he was under 2 runs and over for an entire match. So if they're getting to Hazlewood, then clearly it's even worse for Boland. England are using his predictably great length against him. And one reason it hasn't bothered Hazlewood as much is because he has a good bouncer. And in this series, he has doubled the amount he delivered. Now, of course, some of that was the fun test at Lords where everyone bowled bouncers. But even so, Hazlewood can do that. Would Boland? Probably not. He rarely bowls bouncer spells ever. But he did miss at Lords, so we don't know. What we do know is that both guys have delivered around 150 balls this series on a good length. And weirdly enough, Boland has the better average there. In fact, he's taken both of his wickets where he wants to land the ball, just on that excellent length. However, he can't land there with impunity like normal because England keeps moving around in their crease. We've already done an entire video on how England is leading the world in how to use the crease, either by standing a long way forward, sometimes going back, or taking a couple of steps down the wicket to change the length at the last minute on the bowler. They don't allow you to hit your favourite length consistently. Whereas the Indian batters, they're pretty much all crease bound, meaning that they weren't upsetting Boland's length at all. They are just waiting for him to bowl a delivery that cuts back sideways on them or chase ones that occasionally go the other way. The problem is you can't sit and wait for Boland. He's too good. England understood that and they attacked him because Bazball. And England are scoring 3 runs more and over against him this series when he bowls on length. That is an extraordinary leap from where he normally is. They knew where he wanted to bowl, and they were willing to take a risk to upset it, and so far, it could not be working better. But there's another part of this. They also get outside the line when they come down, taking away his LBW shots. So it is less likely to get the LBW call even when he sees them move and he finds the right length. Also, quite often they're just closer to the ball, meaning they smother a lot of deliveries before they can tear them in half. So that's why this exists. His average in this series off length balls is 60. And before that, his average on a length was 7.18. That is a barely believable number, and there was no way it was ever going to last. This is all the bowlers in a 3-year period with their balls on a length. Only Jamieson is anywhere near where Boland is, and he was another super new bowler. If Boland averaged 11, he'd be on a Hall of Fame trajectory. But 7, no, that is not right at all. To keep up that number, you need to be able to bowl like Wasem Akram did to Alan Lamb in the 92 World Cup. And not even Was could do that consistently. So it's hard to believe that Boland was going to keep this up. Eventually, he was going to have to regress to the mean. Because as good as he was not Wasem Akram around the wicket, reverse swinging at 90 miles an hour, knocking off stumps head off. Boland could not keep that average because no one could. So he regressed to the mean. You could call it luck, but it's simple variance. In the first part of his career, he had a method that batters couldn't work out, but he also rode some of that variance. He was getting a wicket every 8.3 mistakes as people tried to work him out in tests. In the same period, Hazlewood is at 10. Hazlewood takes a wicket every 10 mistakes, which is also the normal mark over the last 2 years of Test cricket. In this series, Hazlewood's actually done better. He's taken a wicket every 8 mistakes. But because of his high economy, his overall average is still not that great. But Boland has a staggering wicket every 34 mistakes in this series, almost 3.5 times worse than it would be for a normal bowler. This is just as surprising as his average of 7 for length balls. But the truth is quite simple. He had a lot of luck and variance before. And that's not taking anything away from how brilliantly he consistently bowled. But England's new method and some variance coming back to haunt him means that he's shit out of luck these Ashes. And because England have scored so freely against him, Australia haven't used him as much. He has 10 overs fewer than Hazlewood, 20 than Stark. And Lyon has a lot more just from 2.5 innings. Not to mention that Mitch Marsh and Cameron Green have almost as many from the combined 5th bowling spot, even if that is over 3 tests. If Boland had managed to stay on, he probably would have evened out his luck a little bit, because a lot of this is just small sample sizes, right? But he can't stay on because England is scoring so quickly from him. England have made 68 mistakes from his bowling so far. And based on this series, you would expect that to come out at around 6.8 wickets. 6 would be fine, 7 would be fine. It's hard to look at this and not think there is something wrong here. But this is the control percentage of the Ashes, and it shows that Boland is only behind Stark, Cummins and Green for creating the most mistakes. He's still hard to middle, and we're seeing that happen a lot. But this time, many of those edges seem to go to the boundary, not into Australian catchers' hands. And then England compound that with a few nice shots. Boland's economy goes up, and Cummins, a naturally defensive captain, yanks him. And the most amazing thing is that this series, Scott Boland's control percentage has been lower than the last Ashes. And I checked this like 38 times because I could not actually believe it. Now it's from far fewer overs, of course. But he could bowl more last time because England couldn't score off him at all. Now they can. Last series against England, he took a wicket every 6.6 mistakes from the English players, which is a ridiculous number. Remember that this time it's 34, which is just as mad. He has regressed all over the mean here. Last Ashes, he should have taken 11.4 wickets from the errors that England made. He took 18. This time it should have been 6.8, and it's 2. But let's just pump the brakes for a minute. Even if he took wickets at the exact rate you would expect for this Ashes, which is also fairly unlikely in a small sample size, 7 isn't that many. So luck probably is the wrong word at the moment because England has played him differently to upset what he is best at. But Boland has still delivered those off-cutters that jag back like they want to eat your soul, and it's got the ball to move away enough to keep all the batters off balance. But in between that, variance and England's footwork-based aggression has got to him. Has Scott Boland run out of luck? You can make that decision on your own. But he has certainly run out of wickets.